probably not a very good way, because if you look at our button, right, we're overlapping. When anything overlaps, it's going to trigger the light off, which means anything at all. If another player touches that box, it will turn off the light. If, like a projectile from a weapon touches this box, it will also turn off the light. If a physics object touches this box, it will also turn off the light. And this is where casting is useful, because casting allows us to filter an event, like a data output from an event, and make sure that it's only the class that we want that will trigger that thing. So that's kind of how you filter, right? If you look at here, our cast node kind of acts as like a bouncer in a club. Right? You're trying to enter the club, and you're just an actor, and the bouncer is like, oh, are you a third-person character? Are you on the list? And if you're not, it's going to bounce you off. But if you are, it's like, yeah, okay. So that's kind of like the same thing. It's like a filter. And it's just checking if you are of the right type, and then letting you in. So let's try that, because, this could mean a lot of things. So what I'm going to try and do here is do a bit of a different mechanic than just a stupid light turning on and off. We're going to try and create a little like soccer game. Don't expect too much. It's going to be pretty buggy, simple, but it should give you an idea of like how to use the cast to filter a bunch of. So we're going to create two things. We're going to create two blueprints, one for the ball and another one for the goal, that yellow thing, if you're not familiar with soccer or football. And that's all we need, really. It's going to be pretty simple. So let's try and do that. So I'm just going to remove everything I've made. I can probably keep that. So let's make a bunch of new blueprints. Right click, create a new blueprint. Again, it only needs to be based on actor. And I'm going to call that one BP ball. All right. Then I'm going to edit my new blueprint. And so what do I need for the ball? All right. Really, all I need for the ball is a mesh of like a ball. So I'm going to add a new static mesh here, right? And then in the properties, I just search for. Sorry, I'm just showing. Yeah, you can search for shape underscore sphere, and you should get that one. Click on that. Actually, that was a very bad example. Please don't use this that shape sphere, because it has a very bad pivot. Let's try another one. That one's a bit better. So if you search for it keeps showing me engine. Sorry, just a sec. I had the name somewhere here. Nope, I didn't. Anyway, if you search for material sphere, this should give you like a nice sphere with a proper pivot in the middle. But you notice something right away if you compile that and drag it in the level. It's a pretty gigantic ball. Okay, if you play from here, yeah, it's a bit big. So let's go back in the blueprint, and in the viewport, you select the ball. You can modify the scale here on the right, and you can type like maybe 0.5. Be careful, by default, it's only doing it one axis by one axis. But if you click that little lock here, then you can only type once, and it does it for every single axis. So once you've done that, compile, you should see that now it should be much smaller. Still pretty big, but for our purpose, I think I'll do it. You can change the material if you want it to look different. Click on the material and then choose whatever you want, something that looks a bit whiter. There you go. It's done. The next thing we want our ball to be doing is simulating physics, because I want the ball to be able to kick and falling and stuff like that. So if you remember our previous lecture, all it takes for an object to be physics is two things. It needs to be movable. In our case, it already is, because everything in Blueprint by default is movable. If you scroll down, we also need another thing, simulate physics, to be turned on. And that's in the physics category here. You just tick the box. That's it. And the third one is it needs to have collision, right? So if you scroll down a little bit in collision, it's been automatically set to physics actor. This happens when you click that box here. When you click simulate physics, it automatically changes to physics actor first. And that's fine, that's what we want. So now compile. And if I play now, hopefully, that thing should just be falling on the ground. And with the player, if I kind of bump into it, it should more or less kick it. It's not amazing physics because we haven't set any properties yet, but for now, this. So cool, we have a ball rolling around. That's step one. Now let's make the goal. I'm going to create a new blueprint. And then, once again, based off actor. I'm going to call that BP underscore goal. Open that up. So now we need to build the goal. So I need just a few meshes, let's say 3 of them. So I'm going to look for static mesh, add one. And in here, I just need to look for like a cube. The 1 meter cube is probably fine. It's pretty big. And now you just need to like scale it, move it around a little bit until you get something that looks like a. So let's scale this guy. Remember the buttons here to switch mode. Scale this guy on the green axis so that it's not too thick. And on the red axis as well. So it looks a bit more like a post. Oops. Make sure you don't scale negative. Sometimes it happens, like when you go too far, you can see that's not great, especially if you're using physics. Physics really doesn't like negative scale, so be careful about it. So okay, I've got my first post. I'm gonna raise it so that the bottom of the post is on the ground level, right? And then I'm gonna move it to the side. So that I got my first post. I'm going to duplicate it. Remember, you can right-click duplicate, or you can also just Control W, or you can also just hold the Alt key and drag it. Actually, sorry, that doesn't work in Blueprint. Control W, you can see it's made another one here, and I can just drag it to the right. Cool. Got my second post, and now I'm going to duplicate it again, drag it to the middle, and rotate it 90 degrees, raise it up. Cool. And I'm going to scale it in the blue axis just to make it longer. More or less. It's not amazing, but I think it will do for now. I'm going to select them all and just change the material to something else. Yeah, that yellow one. It's ugly, but at least we can see it. And then compile it. So what does that look like? Well, it's tiny. Yep, I should have.
Just a quick question about scaling.
Mhm.
How do you, because it does like a snap thing, how do you change what the
Oh yeah. So
snap it is?
when you're in here, you notice at the top there's a bunch of. Mine was actually turned off, but it's this button here. So by default, it's enabled. You can turn it off completely, and then the scale. So when it's on, you can see the scale snaps like that. But if you turn it off, then the scale doesn't snap at all. Or you can just change the snapping value to be whatever you want here. So smaller or bigger. And it's the same for rotation here. That's your snapping rotations. And the movement snapping is here. You need to change that. So yeah, because I've made it like way too small, I'm just going to quickly, to select them all. You can either hold Control and click on another one, or you can also hold Shift and just click on the last one, and it would select whatever's in between. So yeah, I'll just quickly gonna scale it so it looks a bit more real. Whoops. Yeah, by default it's 1 meter, so it's a bit. Okay. It's gonna be a bit ugly, but don't worry about that for now. Sorry, just gonna duplicate again, so I don't have to scale twice. If you wonder how I'm duplicating, I'm just it should be a bit more to scale now. That's better. Okay, so now we can place it somewhere. Doesn't matter. So now what I'm going to do is just add the logic so that, you know, when the ball goes through this, we get a goal. So let's open that up, open the goal blueprint. And now we're going to go into the viewport again. So we have our goal here. All we need to do is add a box, right? We need a trigger box to detect when our ball is touching that goal. So I'm adding a box here. You can change the size of the box with the box extent property here on the right. So you just drag that to until it looks like it's more or less fitting the area, and then, you know, move it up and down so that it kind of fits nicely in there. I think this should do. Okay, so now we have a box that will act as our trigger. If I go in the event graph, I can now connect a begin overlap to detect when that box is being overlapped. So let's do that. Whenever this gets triggered, for now, I'm only going to use a print. So if you search for print string here, all this does basically is that it's going to display a text on the screen. And so I'm going to change that to, right? If you click on the little arrow at the bottom, you have a bit more options. Change the duration to 0. Well, is that a good idea? No, that's not a good idea. So ignore what I just said. Just set the text to go, and then connect that to overlap. Right? Now you can compile, save, and, you know, put the ball somewhere in front of it, and see if it works. I'm going to play from here. I'm going to try and kick the ball, go. And you can see at the top left of my screen, the goal text appeared. If you missed it, it's also in the console. I got a bunch of other stuff going on, but I'll do it again. If you look at the top left of the screen, you can see goal appears, that blue text, right? So that's working. But I want to show you something else, which is the reason why we need to use casting. If now, as the player, I go inside the goal, look what happens. Goal gets triggered, right? That's not what we want. And that's, again, because our actor overlap event doesn't care what touches it. Anything that touches the box will trigger this. So now let's use a cast node to filter and only trigger when the ball is touching it, right? So I'm gonna remember the overlap event gives us a reference of what just touched that box. So we can use that.